What if the very thing you've been taught to believe makes you a good man is actually the reason people don't respect you? Take a look around. Really look. The men who are always agreeable, always available, always trying to keep everyone happy, where do they end up? Their time gets wasted. Their money gets borrowed and never returned. Their effort becomes expected, not appreciated. They give and somehow still get treated like they're invisible. This isn't bad luck. This is a pattern, and it has a name. It's what I call the nice guy trap. The nice guy believes that being good will earn him respect, that kindness will come back around, that if he just proves he's reliable, generous, and understanding, people will value him. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. People don't respect goodness by itself. They respect strength. They respect boundaries. They respect power. Weakness has a signal, and the wrong people can detect it instantly. When you show the world that you have no limits, no standards, no backbone, you don't look kind, you look available. You look easy. You look like someone who can be pushed, guilted, pressured, or ignored without consequences. And once people sense that, the dynamic changes. Users, manipulators, selfish personalities, they don't feel bad about exploiting you. They feel justified. This isn't new. This isn't modern cynicism. This is human nature. Machiavelli understood this hundreds of years ago. He knew that real power doesn't come from being loud or aggressive. It comes from control. Cold, calculated control. From understanding how people actually behave, not how we wish they would behave. Power is strategy over emotion. It's restraint over reaction. It's thinking several moves ahead while everyone else is still caught up in how they feel about what just happened. Most men today have been conditioned to believe the opposite. They've been taught that showing weakness makes them virtuous, that self-sacrifice automatically makes them noble, that avoiding conflict makes them mature, that being endlessly accommodating makes them good men. But no one tells them the cost. People don't see blind kindness as morality. They see it as opportunity. They look at your willingness to help and ask themselves, what can I get from this? They see your patience and think, great, someone I can dump my problems on. They notice that you never push back, never say no, never enforce consequences, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. Human beings prioritize their own interests first. That's not evil. That's reality. And when you offer kindness without self-respect, you're not being virtuous. You're advertising yourself as a resource to be drained. By the end of this series, you're going to understand how to control your image, manage your emotions, and build a presence that commands respect instead of begging for it. You're going to see why being too good makes you weak, and how adopting a strategic mindset forces people to think twice before crossing you. Once you experience real respect, you won't want to go back. So let's start with the foundation. First principle. Stop being the nice guy. The nice guy is society's favorite victim. You know exactly who he is. He's the one who lends money and feels awkward asking for it back. The one who covers for lazy coworkers. The one who stays late while everyone else clocks out. The one who says yes automatically because he's afraid of disappointing anyone. He believes he's doing the right thing. But what he's really doing is teaching people that his time, energy, and boundaries don't matter. Here's the harsh reality most men never confront. People don't respect nice guys. They use them. When you can't say no, when you always put others first, when you avoid conflict at all costs, you send a clear signal. You're saying, my needs come last. My time is flexible. My boundaries are negotiable. And people treat you exactly the way you train them to treat you. Machiavelli once observed that people forget personal loss faster than they forget material loss. What he was pointing to is simple. People care deeply about what benefits them. Your intentions mean very little compared to how your behavior affects their outcomes. Ask yourself something honestly. Do you truly respect the friend who drops everything the moment you call? Or do you respect the friend who has his own priorities, his own life, and sometimes says, "I can't help right now"? The always available friend becomes background noise. He's reliable, sure, but he's also predictable, expected, taken for granted. Like furniture, you don't value what you never have to earn. But the selective friend, when he helps, it means something, because you know he chose to, because his time isn't free, because his yes isn't automatic. Respect follows standards. When you're constantly accommodating, you're not being generous. You're demonstrating that you don't value yourself. And if you don't value yourself, why should anyone else? The manipulator sees this immediately. So does the user. So does the selfish opportunist. They don't see kindness, they see access. They see someone who will give when they should keep, sacrifice when they should protect themselves, and stay quiet when they should speak up. Once they label you as the nice guy, you become their default solution. Every favor, every emotional burden, every responsibility they don't want. You become the person they lean on without ever supporting in return. This is why the first shift isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming strategic. Help when it aligns with your goals or values. Say no when it doesn't. Put your needs on the table because no one else is going to do it for you. This doesn't make you selfish. It makes you intelligent. Selfish people exploit others for gain. Strategic people protect their position so they can operate from strength. When you establish standards, when you show that your time has weight, people adjust. They stop making casual demands. They stop assuming access. They think before asking. The nice guy gets used. The strategic man gets respected. And this leads directly to the second principle. Learn strategic ruthlessness. Being good isn't enough. You have to be capable of not being good when the situation demands it. This is where most men fail. They confuse ruthlessness with cruelty. They think drawing hard lines makes them bad people. But strategic ruthlessness isn't about hurting others. It's about refusing to allow repeated disrespect. When someone crosses your boundaries, your instinct might be to excuse it, to be understanding, to give the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes that's appropriate. But when it becomes a pattern, your softness becomes an invitation. People count on your reluctance to create tension. They rely on your desire to keep the peace. Machiavelli understood this well. A leader who is always forgiving, always accommodating, always soft, becomes vulnerable to those who have no problem exploiting that softness. Strategic ruthlessness means having consequences. When someone borrows money and doesn't repay it, the nice guy stays quiet and hopes it fixes itself. The strategic man addresses it and changes the relationship if necessary. When someone repeatedly disrespects your time, the nice guy keeps giving chances. The strategic man withdraws access. When someone talks down to you, the nice guy tries harder to be liked. The strategic man either confronts it calmly or removes himself entirely. This isn't revenge. It's self-respect with enforcement. People treat you as badly as you allow them to. Most are used to dealing with men who absorb disrespect rather than risk conflict. When you show that poor behavior has real consequences, the entire dynamic shifts. They pause. They think. They adjust. Strategic ruthlessness also means choosing your path even when it disappoints others. It means prioritizing long-term advancement over short-term approval. You don't need to be hard all the time, but when someone shows you through consistent action that they don't respect you, you must be willing to respond with firmness. Strength creates respect. Boundaries create clarity. Consequences create discipline. And that's where real power begins. Now let's go deeper, because once you stop being the nice guy and understand strategic ruthlessness, there's a skill that determines whether all of this actually works or collapses under pressure. That skill is discipline. More specifically, emotional control. Your emotions are not your enemy, but they can be used against you if you don't master them. Every time you react instead of responding, you hand your power to whoever triggered you. Every visible emotional spike becomes a blueprint for manipulation. People learn very quickly what upsets you, what pressures you, what makes you fold, and they store that information. The man who can remain calm while others lose control holds a massive advantage. He thinks clearly. He chooses deliberately. He projects strength without raising his voice or making threats. Emotional control doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you feel everything and still decide how to act. Most men confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. That's not the same thing. Suppression creates resentment and eventual explosions. Control creates distance between stimulus and response. It gives you time. When someone insults you, your instinct may be to defend yourself, to strike back, to explain why they're wrong. That impulse feels satisfying in the moment, but it's rarely strategic. Often, the strongest move is silence. A calm look. No reaction. Letting them reveal their insecurity without your help. When someone pressures you into a decision, the emotional impulse is to comply quickly, just to remove the discomfort. The strategic response is simple. I need time to think about this. And then you actually take that time. No justification. No apology. This is power. Because the person who controls the pace controls the outcome. Machiavelli believed that judgment, not emotion, determines strength. He understood that leaders who act emotionally make terrible decisions. Emotional men choose relationships based on how they feel in the moment, not on loyalty or character. They say yes to opportunities that excite them without calculating the cost. They burn bridges over temporary anger and regret it later. Strategic men don't do that. They evaluate people based on patterns, not promises. They weigh decisions against long-term goals, not short-term feelings. They pick their battles carefully, and when they fight to win. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you reliable. People trust men who remain steady under pressure. They know you won't self-destruct when things get intense. They know you won't lash out, panic, or fold. Emotional control signals competence, and competence attracts respect. It also frees you from the need for approval. When you stop needing validation, you stop being manipulable. You stop chasing praise. You stop fearing disapproval. You can delay gratification, resist emotional bait, and choose responses that serve you instead of soothe you. This is something you practice deliberately. Start small. When someone cuts you off in conversation, when plans change unexpectedly, when criticism comes your way, use those moments to pause, to breathe, to decide instead of react. Over time, you become someone who cannot be pushed around emotionally, and once you control your emotions, you're ready for the next level. Building and controlling your image. This is one of Machiavelli's most misunderstood insights. People don't judge you by your intentions. They judge you by what they can observe. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Very few experience who you really are. Your image, your reputation, your presence, the way others perceive you, matters more than your private thoughts or moral self-image. Most men leave this to chance. They assume that if they're good people, others will eventually recognize it. That's not how perception works. People form opinions about you in seconds. How you carry yourself, how you speak, how you respond under pressure. Once those impressions are set, they're incredibly difficult to change. If your image is easygoing, always available, never pushes back, that becomes your role. No matter how capable or intelligent you actually are, people will treat you according to the image you project. So the solution isn't hoping people see your value. It's building your image intentionally. Decide how you want to be perceived, then align your behavior with that perception. If you want to be seen as someone who commands respect, stop over-explaining. Stop apologizing for things that don't require apologies. Speak with certainty, not justification. If you want to be seen as valuable, stop being available for every request. Scarcity increases perceived worth. If you want to be seen as strong, stop avoiding necessary conflict. Address disrespect calmly and directly. Not emotionally, not aggressively, just firmly. Your image is constructed through small, repeated interactions. How you handle interruptions, whether you hold eye contact, whether you laugh at jokes at your own expense, whether you keep commitments or make excuses. People notice these things even when you don't. There is no neutral. Every interaction either reinforces the image you want or strengthens one you don't. Perception becomes reality. If people see you as weak, they'll treat you as weak. That treatment reinforces weak behavior, and the cycle continues. But if people perceive strength, competence, and self-respect, they adjust their behavior. And that feedback loop strengthens you in return. If you don't build your image deliberately, others will build it for you based on what benefits them. Now comes one of the most powerful tools you can use to protect that image. Silence. In a world where everyone feels compelled to explain themselves, silence becomes dominance. Most men, especially former nice guys, feel uncomfortable with silence. They rush to fill it. They justify. They defend. They talk themselves into weaker positions. Over-explaining is a form of insecurity. It signals that you're asking for permission. Strategic silence does several things at once. First, it makes you appear thoughtful. When you pause before answering, it signals that you don't react impulsively, that you weigh decisions, that you don't operate on emotional autopilot. Second, silence makes other people uncomfortable. And when people are uncomfortable, they reveal more than they intend to. They talk, they explain, they expose motivations. Third, silence is a devastating response to manipulation or disrespect. When someone says something inappropriate and you simply look at them without reacting, the awkwardness shifts onto them. They feel it. They question themselves. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. When someone makes an unreasonable request, instead of explaining why you can't do it, say, "I'll think about it," and then stop talking. The burden moves to them. When someone pressures you, silence buys you time and shows you don't operate on urgency created by others. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates intrigue. When you don't constantly broadcast your thoughts, people pay more attention when you speak. Your words gain weight. This doesn't mean becoming antisocial or withdrawn. It means speaking with intention, using fewer words, letting pauses exist, allowing tension without rushing to dissolve it. When you're comfortable with silence, people listen when you talk. And now we reach a distinction that changes everything. Be useful but never harmless. There's a massive difference between the two. Useful people add value. They solve problems. They contribute skills and insight. Harmless people avoid conflict. They never challenge anything. They prioritize peace over progress. People respect usefulness. They exploit harmlessness. Machiavelli understood that strength requires both intelligence and force. You must be able to recognize traps, and also defend yourself against those who would harm you. Being useful means people want you around because you make things better. Being harmless means people keep you around because you're easy to control. Harmless men stay quiet when they should speak. They avoid confrontation even when injustice is obvious. They allow bad behavior because they don't want to be seen as difficult. That isn't kindness. That's avoidance. When you say nothing while someone is treated unfairly, you're not being good. You're being harmless. When someone repeatedly disrespects you and you ignore it to keep the peace, you're not being patient. You're being harmless. People don't trust harmless individuals in serious situations. They know when pressure comes, these men disappear. Useful men are different. They step up. They confront problems. They're willing to be uncomfortable when it matters. This doesn't mean seeking conflict. It means not running from it when it's necessary. Useful men earn responsibility. Harmless men get sidelined. Choose usefulness, always. And once you're useful, emotionally controlled, strategically silent, and image-aware, there's one final trait that seals your position: unpredictability. Predictable men are easy to use. Unpredictable men are respected. When people know exactly how you'll respond, they can manipulate you. They know pressure works, guilt works, flattery works. Your behavior becomes programmable. Unpredictability breaks that. This doesn't mean being erratic. It means being situational. Sometimes you say yes, sometimes you say no, sometimes you take time, sometimes you walk away. People can't assume access. They have to engage with you as an individual, not a pattern. When your yes isn't guaranteed, it becomes valuable. When your presence isn't assured, it's respected. Predictability is weakness, and this is the truth most men never hear. The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards strength. It rewards boundaries. It rewards those who understand that respect is not given, it's enforced. You don't have to abandon morality, but goodness without power is just weakness in disguise. Real strength is strategic. Real respect comes from standards. And real power comes from controlling yourself before anyone else tries to. Let's pull all of this together, because this is where most men get confused. They hear ideas about power, boundaries, and strategy, and they think it means becoming cold, cruel, or disconnected from everyone. That's not what this is. What you're learning isn't how to dominate people, it's how to stop being dominated by them. The mistake most men make is swinging from one extreme to the other. They go from being passive and agreeable to being reactive and aggressive. They think strength means being confrontational all the time, but aggression is just another form of emotional weakness. It's still reactive. It's still predictable. Real power is calm. Real power doesn't rush to prove itself. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't argue unnecessarily. It doesn't explain itself to people who aren't entitled to explanations. That's why the next layer of this mindset is learning to detach emotionally from outcomes you can't control. Nice guys are obsessed with outcomes. They want everyone to like them. They want harmony. They want approval. And because of that, they're constantly adjusting themselves to manage other people's emotions. They walk on eggshells. They overthink every interaction. They replay conversations in their heads, wondering what they should have said differently. This keeps them weak. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't allow other people's reactions to control your behavior. You do what you believe is correct, strategic, and aligned with your values, and you let others react however they want. When someone is disappointed because you said no, you don't rush to fix their feelings. When someone is upset because you enforced a boundary, you don't backtrack to make them comfortable. When someone disapproves of your choices, you don't bend just to regain approval. Detachment is what makes boundaries real. Without detachment, boundaries collapse the moment someone applies pressure. Guilt, anger, silent treatment, these only work on people who are emotionally invested in being liked. When you detach, those tactics lose power. This is where many men feel fear. They think, if I stop accommodating, I'll lose people. And they're right. You will lose some people. But you need to understand who those people are. You don't lose people who respect you. You lose people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. That's not loss. That's filtration. When you stop being endlessly available, some people disappear. When you stop fixing everyone's problems, some relationships fade. When you stop tolerating disrespect, some connections break. That's not because you became worse. It's because you became inconvenient. And inconvenience is the price of self-respect. Now here's something most men aren't prepared for. Once you change, people will test you. They won't announce it. They won't be obvious. But they will push. They'll make small comments, small demands, small violations of your boundaries. Not because they're evil, but because they're recalibrating. They're asking, is this change real? If you fold even once, you teach them the change is temporary. If you hold your line calmly, they adjust. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need dramatic confrontations. You don't need speeches. You don't need to threaten or explain. You just need to respond the same way every time. Calm, firm, unmoved. When you do this, something interesting happens. People start self-correcting around you. They think before asking. They think before pushing. They choose their words more carefully. Not because you scared them, but because you became expensive to disrespect. That's power. Now let's talk about another uncomfortable truth. Most men are weak because they're dependent. Dependent on validation. Dependent on approval. Dependent on belonging. Dependent on being needed. Nice guys often wrap their identity around usefulness. They feel valuable when they're needed. When people stop needing them, they feel empty. So they unconsciously keep themselves in roles where they're exploited, because at least they're relevant. This is dangerous. Your value should never come from being tolerated or needed. It should come from competence, self-direction, and standards. The moment your identity depends on other people's approval, you become controllable. This is why personal discipline is non-negotiable. Discipline builds independence. It reduces emotional volatility. It creates internal structures so you don't rely on external validation to feel stable. When you train consistently, work consistently, improve skills consistently, and keep promises to yourself, you stop needing reassurance from others. Your confidence becomes grounded instead of fragile. Fragile confidence needs constant reinforcement. Grounded confidence doesn't. This is why powerful men often appear calm and unbothered. They're not performing confidence. They're anchored in it. Now let's address something most people misunderstand. Being feared versus being respected. Fear without respect creates rebellion. Respect without boundaries creates complacency. The goal is neither cruelty nor passivity, it's authority. Authority comes from clarity. People respect men who are clear about what they tolerate, clear about what they value, clear about their direction. Nice guys are unclear. They say yes when they mean no. They smile when they're uncomfortable. They agree when they resent. That internal contradiction leaks out in passive aggression, bitterness, and exhaustion. Clarity removes that. When you're clear, people may not always like your decisions, but they understand them. And understanding builds predictability at the right level. Here's the paradox. You must be internally predictable and externally unpredictable. Internally predictable means you have principles, standards, lines you don't cross. You respond consistently to disrespect. You reward respect. You remove yourself from toxic dynamics. Externally unpredictable means people don't know which response they'll get until they engage properly. They can't assume access. They can't manipulate patterns. They have to show up honestly. This combination creates authority. Now let's talk about consequences, because boundaries without consequences are suggestions. Nice guys state boundaries emotionally, then abandon them under pressure. They say, "I don't like when you do that," but keep tolerating it. They threaten change, then revert to old behavior. This teaches people that boundaries are negotiable. Powerful men don't threaten, they act. They don't argue endlessly. They adjust access. They change behavior. They withdraw energy. They let outcomes speak. This is uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to explaining yourself. But explanation invites debate. Action ends discussion. If someone consistently disrespects your time, you stop making time. If someone speaks to you poorly, you disengage. If someone crosses a line, you don't dramatize. You distance. Silently, cleanly, without resentment. Resentment is what happens when you don't enforce boundaries. Enforcement prevents resentment. Now here's a critical shift in thinking. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. Nice guys take responsibility for how everyone feels. Powerful men take responsibility for how they act. If someone feels upset because you didn't meet their expectations, that's information, not an emergency. You don't rush to fix it. You observe it. You evaluate whether their expectation was reasonable. Then you decide your response. This removes emotional leverage. When people realize they can't guilt you, rush you, or pressure you into compliance, they either adjust or leave. Both outcomes are wins. And this brings us to one of the most important truths of all. Respect is selective. Not everyone will respect you, and that's fine. Trying to earn universal respect is the fastest way to lose self-respect. You're not building a persona for mass approval. You're building a position of strength that attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. The relationships that remain will be different. Calmer, more balanced, more honest, less draining. You'll notice something else too. People will start listening when you speak. Not because you talk more, but because you talk less. Your words will carry weight because they're backed by consistency, by action, by boundaries. This is the transition from being harmless to being formidable. Not loud, not aggressive, not cruel, formidable. And that's where real power begins to show itself. Not in dominance over others, but in mastery over yourself. Now we reach a point most men never fully understand. Even after they start setting boundaries and controlling their emotions. They change their behavior, but internally, they're still asking the same old question. Am I doing this right? That question alone gives away their power. True strength begins when you stop seeking permission, internally or externally. Nice guys constantly look for signals that they're approved of. A smile, agreement, reassurance. Even after they stop saying yes to everything, they still hope their firmness will be accepted. This hesitation weakens the effect of every boundary you set. People can feel uncertainty. They sense when you're testing a new identity instead of owning it. Power requires conviction. Conviction doesn't mean arrogance. It means you trust your own judgment enough to stand by it without constant self-doubt. When you say no, you don't replay it in your head for hours. When you walk away from disrespect, You don't chase closure. You move forward. This is where many men slip back into old patterns, not because others overpower them, but because they feel uncomfortable holding their ground. Understand this clearly. Discomfort is not danger. When you stop being the nice guy, you will feel tension. Silence will feel heavy. Disapproval will sting. But none of that means you're wrong. It means you're no longer numbing yourself with approval. Growth always feels like friction. If you cave in every time discomfort appears, you'll never change your position in the social hierarchy. Power isn't built in moments of ease. It's built in moments where you could retreat, but choose not to. This is why patience is essential. Nice guys want immediate validation. They want proof that their new behavior is working. But respect is slow. It accumulates quietly. People don't announce it. They adjust around you over time. At first, they may push back harder. They may question you. They may test your limits. This is not failure. It's confirmation that your behavior is being noticed. Hold steady. Consistency beats intensity every time. You don't need dramatic gestures. You don't need to explain your philosophy. You simply act the same way today, tomorrow, and next month. Eventually, people stop pushing, not because you argued well, but because you became predictable in one crucial way. You don't betray your own standards. This leads to another important shift: choosing long-term positioning over short-term comfort. Nice guys optimize for immediate peace. They smooth things over. They compromise quickly. They sacrifice leverage to avoid tension. Powerful men do the opposite. They're willing to accept short-term discomfort to protect long-term respect. Sometimes that means saying no even when it costs you socially. Sometimes it means letting a relationship cool instead of forcing harmony. Sometimes it means being misunderstood and letting that misunderstanding exist. You don't correct every false assumption. You don't defend every decision. You let time and behavior do the talking. This is difficult because it requires faith in your own direction. Men who lack direction cling to approval because it gives them a sense of certainty. Men with direction don't need constant feedback. They already know where they're going. So ask yourself this honestly. Do you have a direction? Not vague goals. Not wishful thinking. A clear sense of what you're building, improving, or moving toward. Because direction is what makes boundaries effortless. When you know where you're going, saying no becomes logical instead of emotional. You're no longer rejecting people. You're prioritizing your path. And when your life has momentum, people feel it. Momentum creates gravity. Gravity creates respect. People treat driven men differently. They don't waste their time as easily. They don't make careless demands. They sense that access to you has a cost. This is also where detachment deepens. You stop needing to win every interaction. You stop needing to prove intelligence or dominance. You conserve energy. You pick battles that actually matter. Powerful men are selective with conflict, not because they're afraid of it, but because they understand its cost. Now, here's a final mindset shift for this part. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be taken seriously. Being liked is unstable. It depends on moods, trends, and other people's needs. Being taken seriously is stable. It's rooted in consistency, competence, and boundaries. When you aim for seriousness instead of likability, your behavior changes naturally. You speak with more intention. You tolerate less nonsense. You move with purpose. Some people will like you less. Many will respect you more. And the ones who stay, those relationships will be cleaner, quieter, and far more powerful. This is where everything locks into place. If there's one mistake that pulls men back into the nice guy trap, it's believing that power is something you reach and then keep forever. It's not. Power is something you maintain. And maintenance is boring, quiet, and invisible to everyone except you. The moment you stop enforcing standards, they decay. The moment you stop controlling your reactions, people start testing again. The moment you start explaining yourself too much, you hand leverage back. This isn't about paranoia. It's about awareness. Nice guys live on autopilot. Powerful men live deliberately. Deliberate living means you constantly observe how people respond to you, not emotionally, but strategically. Not to judge them, but to gather information. Respect isn't declared. It's shown in behavior, in how people speak to you, in how they ask for things, in how they react when you say no. Watch actions, ignore words. Someone who respects you adjusts. Someone who doesn't push is harder, guilts you, or withdraws only when they can't get what they want. That information tells you everything you need to know, and once you see it, you act accordingly. You don't confront every issue, you don't seek closure, you don't announce your standards, you enforce them quietly through access. Time, attention, presence. Access is the real currency. Who gets your time? Who gets your energy? Who gets your reliability? Nice guys give access freely. Powerful men make it conditional. This is not cruelty. It's economics. Value is protected by scarcity. When access to you is earned instead of assumed, respect follows naturally. Another trap to avoid is overcorrecting. Some men discover boundaries and swing into hostility. They become rigid, cold, performative. This doesn't create power. It creates tension. True strength is relaxed. You don't need to prove dominance. You don't need to win conversations. You don't need to remind people of your standards. Your consistency does that for you. Powerful men are calm because they're not internally negotiating with themselves anymore. They've already decided who they are and what they tolerate. That internal decision is everything. When you no longer debate your own worth, others stop debating it too. Understand this clearly. The goal was never to stop being good. The goal was to stop being weak. Goodness with boundaries is strength. Kindness with consequences is respect. Generosity with selectivity is power. You don't become respected by demanding it. You become respected by making disrespect expensive. And that doesn't require aggression. It requires resolve. Resolve to walk away when necessary. Resolve to be misunderstood. Resolve to lose people who only valued your compliance. That resolve is what separates men who are remembered from men who are used. The world doesn't reward men who sacrifice themselves endlessly. It rewards men who understand leverage, restraint, and self-control. Men who choose when to give and when to withhold. Men who operate from clarity instead of fear. Once you internalize this, something changes permanently. You stop chasing respect and start attracting it. You stop fearing rejection and start filtering. You stop reacting and start deciding. And most importantly, you stop being the nice guy who hopes people will treat him well and become the man people instinctively think twice about crossing. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're solid, because you have standards, because you no longer need anyone's permission to enforce them. That is power, and once you step into it, you don't go back. This is the final truth. No one is coming to respect you for being nice. Respect is built when you respect yourself first. When you set boundaries, control your reactions, and move with intention, the world adjusts. Some people will fall away. Let them. They were never meant to walk with a man who knows his worth. Power isn't loud, cruel, or dramatic. It's calm, deliberate, and unshakable. Choose strength over approval. Choose strategy over emotion. Choose self-respect over comfort. Because men who remain weak are forgotten. Men who choose power leave a mark.